Hey, it's Jess, and in this video I'm going to show you how to draft a basic t-shirt pattern in CLO 3D. In this video specifically, I will draft the sleeve pattern. So we'll start by finding the rectangle tool in the 2D window toolbar. It's under the polygon tool. Click the workspace, and for the width, that will be our upper arm, and the height will be the sleeve length. So remember, if we go back to our spreadsheet with all of our points of measure, for sleeve opening, I'm going to start with 13 inches. For upper arm, I'll start with 14. And I'm looking at the avatar's upper arm measurement here as well. I'm also considering that the sleeve cap needs to fit into the armhole of the front and back panels. So we'll look at that later. For sleeve length, this is kind of style dependent. I'm going to start with 7 inches for this style. So we'll type in width 14 inches, height 7. Go to the Edit Pattern tool, and let's add some guidelines to our sleeve template. Click the top of the rectangle, right-click, Offset as internal line. The distance will be 5.5 inches, and this line represents the sleeve cap height. You can find sleeve cap height. A good starting point is to look at your armhole depth from high point shoulder, subtract your shoulder slope, and multiply by 2/3, so 0.66. That gives you a pretty good starting point for your cap height. I'm going to do 5.5 inches for this style. We also need to find the center line of our sleeve. So click the side, right click, offset as internal line. The total width of the rectangle is 14 inches, so the center would be 7 inches away. We also need some guidelines for the sleeve opening, since the sleeve opening is slightly smaller than the upper arm. So I'll go to Edit Pattern, and under the Edit Pattern tool there is an Add Point Split Line tool. As you recall, the upper arm was 14 inches, the sleeve opening will only be 13. So on each side I'm going to add a point, 1/2 inch from the edge of the rectangle. So line 1, the yellow line, will be 1/2 inch, and click OK. We'll do the same on the other side. Hover over the bottom of the rectangle, right click. Line 1, the yellow line, will be 0.5 inches, and click OK. Now go to the internal polygon line tool. Click the sleeve opening point, the upper arm point. Click the center top of the sleeve cap. Go back down. Double click to finish. And we need to add some curve here, so under the Edit Pattern tool, go to the Edit Curvature tool, and this allows you to just click and drag on the lines. So we need a nice curve at the top of our cap. Want to make sure that it's not pointy. There should be a hook at the bottom of the cap. So under Edit Pattern tool, there's an Edit Curve Point tool. We'll click this point, and this arm pops up. Drag it until you have a nice right angle. And do the same on the opposite side. The cap looks a little narrow, so I'm just going to drag it out. If you make a mistake, you can always hit Control Z or go to the history and go back a step or two. You really cannot go forward, you can only go backwards. There's also an option to save 3D states. So this is a pretty good starting point for the sleeve. Click the Trace tool, select the sleeve inseam, hold Shift, select the cap while still holding Shift, the other inseam and the sleeve opening, right-click, trace as pattern, and then click to place the pattern. Now you can select the template right click, hide pattern, right click, deactivate pattern and sewing, and just kind of drag it away, up and out of the way. I'm going to move over my back panel slightly just to make room for the sleeve. So obviously this sleeve needs some fine tuning. If we go to the edit pattern tool, we can click on the front armhole, and the length is right here, 10.2 inches. Our sleeve cap is only 9.13, so we need to make that a little bit bigger. The goal is to get the sleeve cap circumference and the armhole circumference to be matching. And the back armhole, click on that with the edit pattern tool. You can hold shift to measure above and below this anchor point, and it will do the math for you. That's 9.8 inches, and our back sleeve cap is 9.3. When you're working with a knit product, it is okay for the sleeve cap circumference to be a little bit smaller than the armhole circumference. Just keep in mind when you're sewing the pattern together, if there's a huge difference between the two measurements, you'll run into some issues. Usually you want the cap to be a little bit smaller than the armhole on a knit product, and for woven you want the cap circumference to be bigger than the armhole circumference so that you have a little bit of ease in the cap. Probably about half an inch is feasible in production. For this style we're pretty close. In order to make it match more closely, we would need to increase the upper arm. One more thing to consider is that usually on the finished garment, the upper arm is measured 1 inch below the armhole level line. So let's select that armhole level line, right click, offset as internal line, 1 inch. And let's click on this line to get the measurement. It's 13.3. Remember, we really wanted 14 inches for the upper arm. So select the sleeve inseam, drag towards the left, simultaneously right click, and we'll type 0.33 to make it a little bit bigger, and then do the same on the other side with the edit pattern tool. Drag over the sleeve inseam, left click, drag towards the right, simultaneously right click, and we're going to move it 0.33 inches. Now the upper arm is measuring 13.9. That's pretty close to the 14 inches that we wanted. And if we measure the front sleeve cap, it is now 9.6 inches compared to the front armhole, which is 10.2. So we're a little bit closer. We're about a half inch smaller. That's going to be a lot easier to sew. The back is 9.7 for the sleeve cap compared to 9.8 for the back body panel. That's really close, so I think we're in a really good place right now. Okay, so the sleeve's done. Let's select the sleeve, clone symmetric pattern with linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing, and paste it on the other side of your front body panel. It's good to keep your pieces arranged this way, it just makes sewing easier. In the next video, I'll show you how to draft neckline trim.